Hi there, and welcome back to Roll on the Adventure, the game where usually we'd be creating a role-playing game, playing it, and then doing a post-mortem. But since we're trying to get the next arc sorted out, we're currently doing the RPG a day questions. Because I was a bit bad again this year, I forgot. I keep meaning to do them, and then only remembering that they exist a couple of days after, or in this case, more like 6.
Well, now you can catch up. So that's good.
We're going to catch up. We're going to get hopefully all the way to the 12th. Should be first broadcast day. Woo!
Woo!
Right then. So, cue the intro.
Roll on the adventure.
Thought we were done, but no. Great. So yeah, we just answered how can a players make a world seem real, which devolves into a bit of an argument about how much backstory is the right amount of backstory. Friendly argument, though. Friendly argument. But so now we're on to the next question. How can a GM make the stakes important? And my first thing is make them personal. Find out, work with what the players tell you there is important to them, and kind of put it under threat and stuff. I think that's my general advice there. What do you guys think?
Yeah, pretty much the same. If it's, well, I don't know if you guys read many comic books, but a lot of them, superhero ones especially, have basically fallen into the endless loop of, oh my god, the world's about to be destroyed. Oh wait, no, it's been saved. Which, because if the world ever were to be destroyed, it would fundamentally change the premise so much. You know it's not really going to happen. It's quite easy to fall into a similar trap with RPG stories of something big and all this devastating is going to happen, which the players kind of go, okay, fair enough, that's a big thing, I guess we should stop it. But they're kind of, it feels more like you're doing it for the sake of form than they don't have much actual engagement with it because they're saving the world because they should do so. They don't have any particular care other than it's the plot. Whereas if it's like, oh god, one of our friends is going to get slightly discomforted, we should stop that, they actually have some incentive and investment in making sure whatever bad thing was going to happen doesn't. So yeah, don't make sure it's something that's actually, well, give the players scope to fail effectively, otherwise.
Make the threats credible, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the old gamblers thing. Don't risk anything you're not afraid to lose.
Yes.
That's a nice analogy. I really like that.
Yeah, just fit. Yeah, with you were saying about the whole ending the world thing. I think often that can be a good setup, but they only really get involved once something goes wrong. Got another exalted anecdote if people want that one.
Go on then.
So yeah, there's one of my exalted players took a follower. He also took an army, but he took a follower to basically be one of the generals in his army. Well, not general, but you know what I mean. A sort of ranking officer in his army who was called Rashid, who was a fire aspected dragon-blooded. And Rashid kind of, he was the tutor NPC that kind of talked them through stuff at the beginning.
That's nice in a tabletop game.
Well, so I was kind of like explaining how to do stunts and things like that, and using what he was doing as an example, using him using charms as an example of how to use charms, that kind of thing. Because there's quite a bit of technical stuff. So it was him and the players fighting, but I was using him as the sort of, here's how you do this. Does that make sense?
Tutorial NPC, yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
I mean, for Exalted, you kind of need it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of moving parts.
But yeah, people really grew to like Rashid. And then there's this Death Knight invading, and we have to stop this Death Knight, otherwise doom, gloom, etc. And then the Death Knight killed Rashid, and then the whole party changed, and now it wasn't just about stopping him destroying the world. It was personal, like really personal. The best thing is, the PC who took him as his follower also died, and people didn't care as much.
That's cold.
It was beautiful. No, the guy who was playing him came back and didn't care as much that his PC had died than he cared that we'd killed Rashidov. But it was working with, I think if he'd have just been a guy who showed up, that was a bit different. But because he had a pre-existing link, I'd worked with what they'd given me and then gone with it, if that makes sense. If your players mention that they have like a family and things, that can be really good. I just got I did an exalted plotline in my last game about like a character's father, an old mentor, which is nice. Their village was under, the whole, this village is under threat because the gods are acting up. It's like, yeah, and part of the reason they're acting up is because you were the shaman's apprentice, and you've not been around because you've been off gallivanting doing all this exalted stuff. And I think that leads into my other thing, which is if you can't make them part of the stakes, make them part of the problem, because players kind of want to fix those things sometimes. Or at least they'll definitely feel involved if them being there is part of the reason this is happening. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, make it actually, as you say, them, rather than just kind of you come to a random place and there's a person with an exclamation mark above their head, and if you click them, they tell you some stuff. It's like, yeah, although you defeated thanks to you for defeating those goblins in the jungle, but now due to that, there's been some changes and some other forces now appeared, where it kind of keeps them tied into the setting a lot more, and also, yeah, gives them a bit more investment, involvement, rather than just let's go between random plot points.
Dimitiris, I think you're going to have a really interesting take on this because you do more horror. So, how do you feel that applies to like horror gaming? Because I'm primarily talking about like fantasy adventure.
Well, I think that I also use the same things in my fantasy games, but my biggest thing about stakes is I always visualize, when I create the plots, I always visualize these sort of turning points, these things where player characters need to make a choice of some sorts. This always has some form of immediate reaction. So in a fantasy game, they pick the right door and they leave the left door, and the right door has, a monster, a trap or something. Or in a horror game, it might be longer to set up. But again, there's an immediate effect. They choose to help the prisoners instead of chasing the bandits or something. What I try to do is have a midterm way that this choice they made reflects like a midterm think.
Yeah.
And also a long term. So 3 weeks later, they stumble upon some evidence that their choice was impactful in some way. So the bandits are at it again, or something like that. Or it might be a good thing where the family helps them and says, "Oh, thank you so much." And they perhaps like in a horror game, I would actually do some really good pacing work and say they're invited to the saved family's home for dinner because they wanted to repay the favor. And they have dinner. My players will think, "Oh my God, there's something going to happen here. So, they're going to be crazy monsters inside the food or something." But at some points, you show them that your actions had consequences. They have a nice exposition of character, perhaps.
Yeah.
So and they move on, and they're on their feet. So that, and paranoid, which is always good in a horror game. At the same time, they don't have any doubts about the reality of the world. Oh, that's my take on this.
So it's that sort of player training to show that their choices are meaningful.
Yeah, I write these things down, and I plan to insert them back into the game instead of just going forward with my idea and my plot. When players do something important, I make sure I interrupt this flow to give them a glimpse of what happened because of their actions, always.
Yeah, there's like that classic bit of like the player party have crawled to this abandoned gas station at 4 a.m. out of the like deserts because they're being chased by something. And there's a guy turns up and picks them up, and it happens to be the guy they saved a few sessions ago. I've done that one before. So you think that the positive reinforcement is really important as well? That's really cool, because I kind of find myself forgetting that when I'm talking about these things.
Yeah, like I think yes, definitely. It makes it feel more real. It gives them a sense of fulfillment as well. And to be honest, like the worst game masters I've experienced as a player are people who are very punishing to player characters. Like there's this sort of power balance difference. So giving good outcomes to your players makes them feel that it's not in vain. If they put in the work, there's bound to be good things happening to them.
It's a bit of a stereotype of kind of particularly the old school Dungeons and Dragons GM of being like trying to kill off the PCs in various interesting ways and things, which it is a play style, but it's not one I particularly enjoy. As Dimitiris says, it's normally a lot more fun to go, that good thing you did, or when you were successful, here's some consequences from it. Isn't this awesome? To encourage them to actually do it again, as opposed to, that good thing you did. Well, that character was then hunted down by vampires anyway. Isn't it great? You achieved nothing. Woo.
And you could do that though. You could kind of swing it both ways. Whereas the guy gets hunted down by vampires anyway. He's killed, but before, now the people are coming knowing that you're defending this town, and they're like, "Ooh, we're a bit wary." That'd be quite cool once they know you by name, and that you could swing some stuff quite interestingly there. But again, it's just a case of making it personal, I think.
All right. So next question is...
Oh, yeah.
How can we get more people playing? Purple, you're the most experienced person in this, I think.
I generally find that just reducing barriers to entry is the first thing. And the second is letting people know it's out there, funnily enough. Genuinely, there are so many people that want to give this stuff a try but aren't aware of opportunities to do so. And as soon as someone has to go do a specific thing, they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I like it." As soon as they have to sort of start emailing around, they feel like they're putting themselves on the line a bit. And they feel like then they better be good, otherwise, and then it kind of puts them off. Whereas that combination of easy access and letting everyone know generally really works. And sometimes you've just got to really go with the hard sell, to be honest. There was a guy at Amacon who wanted to, he was like, "I've got a couple of kids, they're growing up, and I've seen that this can be a really positive thing in a lot of people's lives. It helps your imagination, and it's what I kind of want for my kids." And he's like, "Can I come and watch one of the D&D games?" I was like, "No, just come and play, because that you'll get more out of it that way." And he was like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm a bit nervous about it. I don't really know what I'm doing." I was like, I basically just really put on the hard sell. And he got back to me afterwards and just went, "I'm really glad you did that, because I had a great time and now I can run this for my kids." So, you've got, obviously this doesn't work with everybody. You've got to know when to pull back, but occasionally the hard sell is the right way.
Okay. Everyone has pretty much given answers regarding to inclusivity and that sort of thing, and I think it has been covered. I really want to just emphasize how important it is to get people, friends close to you into the hobby if you want, or if they're up for it. But explain to what would be considered normies that what you do, and offer them the opportunity to play with you as well. I think most of the games I've played with friends that I knew before the hobby were amazing. It helps that you can depend on them to show up. It's people who you'd hang out with anyway. You might watch a really stupid movie. I remember playing before the internet was ubiquitous. So sometimes we'd just hang out to watch crappy horror DVDs. So actually getting them to play RPGs was much, much more enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I do love a really good bad movie. I've been watching some of the Godfrey Ho martial arts movies. But often they can be really good inspiration for a really dumb ninja game as well.
Chris?
Similar to what Purple said, really, of if you want people to take part, firstly they've got to know it's there, and then you've got to make it as easy as possible for them. As well, even relatively simple character sheets, if you've not seen one before, you look at them and it's kind of this list of numbers and words and, oh God, what's going on? So make it, be quite friendly and just kind of go, okay, you want to do it? What do you want to do? Okay, you need to roll this. If you want to, I can explain where on your sheet that comes from. Otherwise, we can just go with it. And just remember that, everyone has to have their first time somewhere, and it's probably going to be a bit awkward and clunky. But just, let them have fun. And, if in doubt, just err on the side of letting them do more stuff, because, oh no, you're only level 1, you can't do that, is probably not going to incite them to come back again.
Because they don't know necessarily what that means. They might have made the wrong choices for the image of their character in their head.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And try and be very clear of what type of power level and theme this game is going for. Because if you say something's like Lord of the Rings, that means, Aragorn in D&D terms would probably be a level 10 character or something, whereas a lot of the halflings would be level 1 or 2. So 2 people could have very different images of how competent they expect their character to be from the same description.
The first level wizard shows up expecting to full on Gandalf it, whereas Gandalf...
And you can go pew pew one.
Yeah. Well, Gandalf very rarely casts a spell. It's mostly just... just goes on pure role-playing. But anyway...
Yeah, but surviving a battle with a Balrog was, big.
Yeah, but I don't know how much of that was actually a fight, and how much of that was him leveraging his heritage, etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's if he happens to have met this Balrog, back, in a previous age of the world, and knows the way to defeat it because he was there when it became a Balrog or something like that. That's a little bit different.
I just tend to assume he was lying. He's yeah, Balrog, totally. I totally did not go to the treasury, get a load of money, and then get wasted. Nope, Balrog on it.
Brilliant. We got very distracted then. But one thing I wanted to cover with this before we move on is game choice. So obviously trying to get new people into playing, I find that D&D is really good because people recognize the name.
The name factor is definitely a major thing.
Yeah. Franchise games can work. My Night Vale one's got a few people in.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of people asking about Kawagami High, weren't there?
Yes, that got quite a lot of attention.
at the moment, I can't think of any like really good ones right now. The 40k ones, obviously, it can be a good choice for that.
Star Wars?
Oh yes, Star Wars. I don't have the funky dice, otherwise probably would.
I do like that system, but yeah, I don't have the dice myself.
It is a very good system. Yeah.
But you can always do D6 very, very simple system as well, and everybody has D6 dice.
Yeah, so what are your suggestions on systems and setups to get new people in? Do you drop them in at the deep end? What do you reckon, Dimitiris?
I always, for really new people, as many cliches as I can, just because they've never experienced them. So I go with small village. You go out of the world and you do stuff. Probably a lair of some vaguely humanoid monsters like goblins or hobgoblins or orcs or etins at worst. Sometimes when I play with Greek people, I try to incorporate lots of Greek folklore monsters, like we have a version of the goblins and things like this. So I try to use these because they're more connected to people's understanding of fantasy.
So more recognizable stuff then.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of assumptions that are kind of unspoken, I suppose, and trying to keep those straight with someone that hasn't played before, or even worse, if it's a complete mix, that can be really tricky.
Yeah, I think that, sometimes, especially in fantasy, with very established things, you have this disconnect between what things are. I find this tons of times in Vampire. So people who've seen Blade and people who've seen Underworld and people who've seen Interview with a Vampire come with a totally different understanding of what vampires are. So this is why I go to more simple things, especially for new people.
Yeah. Chris, what are your sort of go-to systems for new people?
So most of
and why?
Yeah, so most of the newbie introduction I've had to do has been at anime conventions, which does tend to change things a bit. So Maid tends to be fairly popular because it's an easy system with fairly straightforward, obvious hooks, and the character generation alone is normally enough to get people interested. So for those that have never played it, you basically have a shed load of, you get some normal stats and whatnot, but then you have a shed load of random tables you roll on for characteristics. So you can be an angel, you might wield a chainsaw, you might be a were snake, all kinds of things, which
were snake,
everyone's favorite, where you tend to end up with characters that for a crazy one shot are you have some very obvious visual and mental hooks, and then it's just you need to try and please your master, or at least take credit for doing so. Go.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of the players bouncing off each other, random shenanigans happening. It's very easy to just get involved, and because it's such a light system, it's just what stat, can I do this? Just pick a stat and justify it, basically. So that's great. Outside of an anime convention, that probably wouldn't be a particularly helpful idea because it's very, very anime nerdy. But within the anime con, it's normally fairly good. Outside of that, D&D 5th is a really good, decent, streamlined system, especially in comparison to some of the earlier Dungeons & Dragons ones, where I do really enjoy how you get a D&D character sheet and it has virtually all of the things you need on it, compared to something like an Exalted Second character sheet, which is a brutal lie, where you need at least 2 or 3 pages of supplemental information of your charms, widgets, and everything else to be able to use it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so in Exalted, because you'd have your stats and your skills on your character sheet, you might be able to write your charm names. You're not sure as hell not going to have the space to write down what they do or anything. And because most of them have their own unique special powers, you're either going to have to scribble them down on the back of the sheet, have another reference sheet, or have the book open on your lap all the time. Whereas for D&D, outside of combat, virtually everything you need should be on the front of your sheet, except maybe a few utility spells.
Yeah.
So it tends to run really smoothly just for, I want to try and do this. Okay, roll this skill or this stat.
One of the big problems I had with Exalted for new people was that I've had a few players, because of the way charms are written, that couldn't work out where the where the flavor text ended and the system terms began.
Oh god,
yes.
They
kind of ran into each other a lot more in second, and oh god,
yes.
So trying to get them to work out what they were doing was an absolute nightmare in places. Whereas at least D&D segregates it a bit more.
Well, D&D, a power will literally do what it says it does.
Well, Fourth had a flavor beforehand.
To be fair, I literally skipped Fourth. I've never played it.
I really enjoyed it. It was a good.
4 was amazing.
Shall we get a game of 4 sorted?
I basically skipped from AD&D to 5th Ed, so
yeah. Fourth was a miniature combat game first and a role-playing game second.
No, that's not true. That's not how it happens. Like
he will fight you.
No. Like people say that, but I have never used a grid in 4th edition. I had to use grids in 3rd edition.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
what about bursts and stuff like that then?
But like bursts these things were more important in 3rd edition.
I disagree, but I think that could have been how we were playing it.
I don't know. I think D&D 4th had me do less combat. It literally shaved hours from planning battles. And
yeah.
And I think this was revoked in 5th edition. So 5th edition battles take as long as 3rd edition battles.
Yeah.
So this is why you need miniatures and grids for that. I don't know.
I kind of get you.
Like in 4th edition, I've never used it, never needed to. I always knew, and my players always knew that they would be done with combat in about 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So it wasn't that important to track down movement. While in 3rd edition, it's insane. And 5th, anyway, I'm just being a 4th edition fanboy here.
Hey, no worries. See, I came at it quite differently, but I think also combat was still as important. It was still like a big thing that you did.
Important, yes. Not tedious and long and, so overly detailed.
Yeah, that's not what I was arguing.
So you have things like when things are blooded, for example, which is an amazing mechanic. But it doesn't involve grids or things like that. So you have lots of things to do in combat that have nothing to do with with grids and tactics. That's my thing. It's not a war game on rails. I think 5th edition is more like that than 4th. But again, I'm the biggest fanboy of 4th edition there is out there.
I'd like to say, and that wasn't a dig. I actually just really enjoyed having some pieces and a board and doing all that stuff. I genuinely really enjoyed it. Whereas I've never enjoyed it when I tried it with 3.5. I thought it was it did that bit well, if you know what I mean. Also, its skill challenge system was really good.
If you're going to do something like a kind of the grid combat or have a very detailed system, it's generally better to fully commit to it at least. Because I'm playing 5th Ed currently, where we're using a battle map and moving things around. And I feel it's making it the player's abilities, like one of them is a dragonborn that can breathe lightning, stuff like that. So he's continually trying to get things lined up so he can breathe lightning at them. So it gives a lot. I feel it's kind of making it a lot more tactical and in depth rather than just, I guess they're in a line, or make a dex check to see if you can line them up. It makes it feel a lot stronger on that element of the game rather than being a bit hand wavy like some other games can be.
Yeah. I think, again, this is definitely a play style thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's just nice that it does kind of fully support it rather than, the last time I had to do a map for Exalted for a big combat, I think the scale was something like 1 inch was 200 meters or 500 meters or something, because between movement charms, mech war striders with glowing energy wings, various spirit allies and stuff, just doing it on a 20 by 20 foot grid would be like everybody is off on the other side of the room somewhere at the end of the first movement phase.
Yeah. I tend to do sort of overview maps.
Yes.
And then, if I do them.
Yeah, a lot of the time you can just kind of get by with description or a bit vaguer.
Yeah, cool. So, this I think works well with has a game surprised you? For me, the obvious one again here has got to be 4th edition, because I heard loads and loads of people saying it was terrible, and then I played it and I absolutely loved it. Because I had a great time. I've played it a few times. It's been an absolute blast each time. I did not expect to like something that, again, I found the way we played it was quite mechanical in combat, and I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did, partly because my previous experience doing that in 3.5 was pretty terrible. So that was a really nice change around. Found it just really smooth and streamlined, and it kind of came out of nowhere for me. My other one where it surprised me, well, it's not so much as a surprise, but I did actually manage to get to run a Stardust Crusaders game in Fellowship, and it did manage to pull it off. It was a lot of fun. We just refluffed a load of things that you'd normally be able to do using your special moves as stand powers. Some of them are stand powers, some of them as not, and it just worked. Because luckily the prescriptive fiction stuff that Powered by the Apocalypse games trade on, is this a sensible move for you to attempt? A lot of that scales really well to having wacky super beings stood behind you, which worked out really nicely. I didn't have to make any rules changes to get it to work.
That is something I like about some games like Fate. You can do it as well, where you can, by just changing the slide of what's considered a good or average or great success, you can really change the feel of the game. So if like a moderate success is normally you punch through 1 inch of concrete, if you just change that to you punch all the way through a steel vault, you can keep exactly the same rules base, but just kind of adjust everything around that. Sorry, slight tangent there.
Dimitiris?
I think the biggest surprise was the very, very latest Cult game. So I've read the previous edition. It was an old game. It was very, very close to all these horror games that I'm used to playing, Chronicles of Darkness and World of Darkness and all sort of things, and Cthulhu. But I just saw the Kickstarter PDF for Divinity Lost, and it was insanely good. It had amazing art, very, very inspiring and thought-evoking lore and setting, and it's so precise in character creation. It's so amazing in giving you things to do as a game master. I couldn't believe that a game would actually do that. So what they did is they made game master actions, things like split the party or throw them red herring or things like this, and they created this sort of toolbox that whenever you need to instantly increase the complexity or raise the stakes, you have a toolbox of things that you can immediately do. And you can include these things in any game. I pretty much use Cult as a source book for my Mage the Awakening Chronicle without any problems, because I don't use the rules. I use the point of the game, like the design inspiration behind it, and it can fit in any game, in any even in fantasy games. They have amazing ways to randomize descriptions for people. So
nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. So it's very, very impressed. I'm going to back every single Kickstarter for Divinity Lost.
Oh man, the last Cult that I read, I think it was the 2nd edition. But yeah, that it was really cool. But I was just thinking when you said that, like trying to bring that sort of weird, like Gnosticism into a mage game would be cool. It's like you are gods. Everyone is. You're just, escaping the prison that's been built for you. Would be a really cool take on a mage game. It's, like not just the GM's toolkit. I was thinking the ideology could be really fun to play with, especially if the players at the beginning know that it's not actually the case. The characters don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just made me smile. Yeah. What sort of system does the new one use?
It's a system of its own. They use D6s, I think, or D20s. I'm not sure. Like, there are actions in the game. They have.
Are you pulling up the PDF now? Is that what's
happening?
Yeah,
yeah. That's what happened.
Quick rules check.
I have it on speed dial, basically, like in just there for me. D6s. I know you roll 2 dice together. Come on.
So yeah, quick rules check. But yeah, so it uses a couple of different types of dice, does it?
I think so. So bad at this. No, basically I don't really care about this thing, although they look amazing, and I want to use the system and play Cult properly at some point. They have amazing archetypes, disadvantages, advantages. They force you to have a dark secret, and that's the thing. They build on character creation a lot, and they involve it with the main plot, which is awesome.
That's really cool. So the main surprise there was just the depth of the GM's toolkit and the player toolkit for setting up.
Yeah, and how they created this sort of mechanic for the table. So you use things as a storyteller, as a game master, to influence. Like, it's really specific. It's not. It's
not just wing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome. Like, good GM advice can be a bit hard to come by. Anyway, Chris.
I think it's been a while since I played it, but Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition, which I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it had a reputation for being overly fiddly and having loads of cards and tokens and playing too much like a board game.
Is that the funky dice one?
Yes, it was in a lot of ways very much the precursor to the Star Wars Funky Dice.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Except you had a shed load of, essentially you had all of your special like combat maneuvers and attacks and stuff had recharge time, so you put tokens on them, and then they basically had cooldowns and stuff. Because you could get other maneuvers and techniques that, while they had tokens on, would give you a bonus or something. So I found it ended up being probably one of the more interesting, engaging combat systems I've used, because you had all of this in front of you on cards, so you weren't having to continually flick through or make up your own summary sheets or look in the rules or whatever. And again, because you had all the tokens and counters on stuff, it was always really obvious of, okay, next turn, those two are going to cool off a bit. that means that I'll then have another point I can put allocate to that, and so on and so forth. So the entire combat system flowed together really well.
Yeah.
It's slightly awkward in that I really enjoy playing it, but because the core box was like, the core rules was literally the size of a shoebox to fit all the widgets and stuff in, I enjoy playing it, but I would never want to buy or run it just because it's so big and bulky.
Oh, that's really cool.
But I wasn't expecting to particularly enjoy that. It's like, instead of your character sheet, you have a character box that contains your sheet and all of your stuff. But yeah, it plays really well when it actually hits the table. It's just a bit of a bugger to actually transport.
Oh wow, that was really cool. Again, it's like, I think that's one of those things like I was saying about four. And we just obviously disagreed. Mechanics having mechanical chunks doesn't make it bad if those work. Yeah,
it's one that very much took odd rules, but it did fully commit to it, so it worked. If it had kind of gone a bit more trad, it would have been some kind of weird hybrid thing that would have probably seemed even stranger.
Yeah.
As a game designer, what I took from 4th edition that 5th is missing. There was a design direction. There was a choice. Everything that happened in 4th edition seemed deliberate. They said, okay, we're doing this this way, and that's our priorities. In 5th, I don't really saw that.
Yeah, I get you. I do agree with you there. I think a lot of the best games do that. They go, this is what this game is about, and just commit. I mean, I really like Legends of the Wu Lin. That's a really interesting system, but it's all about building things up over time. And it's trying to get the sort of there and back of sort of kung fu movie combat, like building up to like the big hit. And sometimes it doesn't work, but they really have committed on it, and everything uses that system. Because they were like, yeah, this is what we're going to do, and we're just going to make everything work with it, and there's no exceptions, which is really nice. You don't use like a separate subsystem for doing X than you are when you're doing Y. Every roll is you roll your kung fu skill, and then you do some like moving around of dice afterwards. And it's always similar moving around of dice. I thought it was a really nice sort of commit and go thing.
I do like actual unified systems rather than things that have lots of AD&D, if you ever played it, was horrendous for that, where some things were you wanted to roll high, other things you wanted to roll low. Thieves had percentiles. Elves could detect sloping corridors using a D6 or something, and it was this nightmare of kludged together subsystems.
Well, then I suppose on the flip side, there is always the thing of, if it doesn't do everything well, you can still have fun with the parts that it does do well.
Oh, most definitely. I had a lot of fun with AD&D back in the day, but when you look at it from a design perspective, you suddenly realise that pretty much every table was playing with more or less their own house rules, because the likelihood of anyone using everything by the book is minimal.
Right, so we've got 3 questions left. So, Dimitiris, you mentioned this earlier. Question 10 is, how has gaming changed you?
Well, pretty much being into a different person's shoes is quite important. I've been thinking about, certain predicaments my characters have been in. I remember for a LARP, the Requiem LARP I was a storyteller for. At some point I portrayed a character of different sexuality, so being into his shoes was quite different for me and made me think a lot. And another time I've portrayed a person with a child, so a single father, so that was it makes you think. It makes you ground yourself in a way that just reading the news or being current with social events is fine, but if you're actually role playing, it gives you a huge boost to empathy and understanding of some issues. Obviously, again, this is nothing close to actually experiencing these things, but it's a huge boost, and that's been a great thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It's like, as long as you remember that you can step out of this, other people can't do that. Yeah, like the whole it's not quite a mile in their shoes, but at least you're making a bit of an effort, I suppose.
Yeah, it just, I'm still going to be the person I am. It's good to at least try to imagine how it is to be different people. That's always a bonus.
Yeah. I think for me, a lot of my sort of social skills and stuff I've built up through doing role-playing games, especially because I've been in that running a lot of games, running for a lot of people. So I'm playing a lot of characters. Like my improvisational skills have, rocketed since I started doing it. I now run improv jams at conventions, despite not doing much improv, and I just basically get away with it because I do a lot of GMing. It seems
It's very much fake it till you make it.
Yeah, and it's got me to be really good at just engaging with people that I don't really know, and that's been really interesting. Just overall, it's really helped my confidence as well.
Yeah, I found that as well. It's once you kind of realise, well, especially for convention games, that you took, 4 to 6 people, some of whom may have known each other, but not all as a group, and you basically helped them explained a system to them, made them scribble down some randomly generated numbers, and then you've had a really good time for like 2 to 3 hours, based more or less off whatever random nonsense you managed to gabble up during that time period. Kind of like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I can manage to give an actual structured training course to people or whatever, because something with some back organization behind it is a lot easier than some randomly generated nonsense that just seems to work.
Yeah, like again, it's just you get good at what you practice, and I think GMing especially kind of helps me practice like my social skills, things like that.
How about soft skills like work stuff? So organizing meetings, things like that. How do you find this?
Just for explaining rule systems is because it's kind of a similar skill to being able to explain, how you log in or how you do certain things. Of okay, you've got this stuff which is structured, which actually means this, therefore you can do that kind of thing, where you can't get angry or stroppy at them or whatever. So it's kind of okay, I'm going to try and explain this now. I'm going to try and explain it in a way that hopefully you'll get. I'm going to be friendly and engaging, etc.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I think mine is the how much time everyone spends speaking on the table. So when I'm game mastering, I try to have everyone, not interrupting and do things like that. So and have an equal voice into this. So I find that I put this in meetings as well. If I see someone not speaking enough, I just point them to that direction.
Yeah. I mean, also, one thing that I have noticed that works out quite well is that it makes you quicker at picking up new systems wherever they are and recognizing sort of how things interplay. Because if you've read a lot of game systems and they're all quite heterogeneous and you've got to pick them up and play them, then you kind of get used to just distilling the core information out of them. I've got so much better at like speed reading and things like that because I've had to just find information fast. That's been a cool one.
Or kind of refining out the core point of this is what all of this is actually telling me from several goddamn pages of text.
Yeah, I've got a lot better at that, and I think a lot of that is role playing. Cool. Right then, so we have 2 more questions, and then we're just gonna sign off. The second to last one is wildest character name, and to be honest, I'm gonna have to go. Okay, so there was a game where we based it was an Eclipse Phase game. I started off with a TPK. So all the players died at the very beginning, and it was a mystery of working out how they died.
Well, that's cool.
As after they got resleeved, yeah, they were trying to solve their own deaths. It was quite fun.
So were they ghosts, undead, that sort of thing?
The way it works in Eclipse Phase is you can have your mind restored from backup.
Oh, I see.
And we had some absolute wonders. We had a guy who basically went, "I'm gonna be David Bowie." Just gonna play David Bowie in this setting, which was pretty good. We had a guy who was basically playing hero protagonist from Snow Crash.
That's cool.
And I think it was something like Lazarus Stardust or something was his name. Well, his professional name when he's doing all sorts of things, but not doing his day job, because he was had a normal boring name, and then he was at the weekends he was Lazarus Stardust, last of the freelance hackers, and world's greatest swordsman.
Was that on his business cards?
He literally played the guy from Snow Crash. It was beautiful.
Sweet.
Had a shitty 9-to-5 job, and there was some sort of hacker hero on the internet. And that's not the weirdest name I think I've ever had in a game. It's just one that stood out because it was very different to all the rest. Does that make sense?
It does.
And it was unexpected from how he introduced his character, and it just hit and went really well.
I would say mine. Well, lots of characters in my games have beautifully mundane names that show their humble origins and things like this. So things like Bob is actually quite common in my games. But I think that the weirdest one. So it was this stage that I was moonlighting as a house game master for a local hobby store, and
yeah, cool.
I was paid in books basically. So I would have to entertain local players by GMing, and in the end of the day, I would get some money towards buying books on D&D. This is how I got most of 3rd edition.
Nice.
But the rule was that the people could make anything that was published by Wizards of the Coast. So any concept I would have to accommodate. And we had a weird party with a pixie and a woman who's an astral plane race. And we had a centaur as well. And the centaur was a guy who usually wasn't very much into RPGs. We were all around 15 to 16ish, and he was slightly older. He was 17. He had that motorbike, and it was a Honda ZR-ZX is the name of the model. So he made a centaur called ZR-Zix just from rearranging the names on his motorbike's brand, and that was pretty much the weirdest name I ever experienced in RPGs.
Oh man, that's beautiful. Chris?
I can't think of any PCs of my own that have had particularly wild or crazy names. Most of the ones that tend to stand out, I guess, are probably from Exalted, because they tend to be fairly memorable names, and that game was fairly long running.
They can be very memorable.
Yeah, so we had Fort Steadfast, who was the king, and his more or less wife, Lady Key, who has some vaguely implied backstory that she might be the key to hell in some way, but it's never actually come up and nobody's bothered investigating.
That's pretty wonderful.
Which is very exalted, but yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that kind of leaps out, unfortunately.
No worries. Okay, so our last question is wildest character concept. And I'm going to want two. I'm going to want the weirdest one you've done and the weirdest one you've seen someone do. I'm going to end with the weirdest ones I've seen.
Oh, God, your ones are going to be bonkers, isn't it?
They're almost all one person as well.
Orphan mashup.
Yeah, it's all Graham.
You wouldn't know it. He seems so nice.
Yeah, so who wants to go first?
I'll take the lead. So the weirdest concept I've ever done was pretty much the last campaign I played. I played as a player character. It was a Discworld game, and I was playing a member of the Fools Guild. So it's not my first bard that I've played, but it was one of my favorites. So he was really wacky. We weren't allowed any flashy spells because, I was technically a bard, but I couldn't really do very arcane things. I was more of an entertainer, inspiring, and things like that. And that's my wackiest. Like, I was a really bureaucrat fool, which was a great concept.
That is a wonderful combo. And
the weirdest concept I've ever seen somebody do is probably on a LARP game. We had this guy who played a corrupt union member from the telecom company, and because in Greece it's just a nationalized telecom, so all these guys are in a union thing, and you played the really sleazy, but again, guy next door sort of person. That was fun.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, my one for like ones I've done, I think got two that kind of stand out. There was one, again, most of these are because of where they came, what game they were in, rather than like actually just being particularly bizarre. I played a really good Mutants and Masterminds game many years ago, and my character concept was I was going to be the last of the pharaohs, and I'd worked out my power, and my power was that I'd taken Fortress, and I'd taken like a really convoluted set of Fortress special abilities, which allowed me to have the Fortress be inside my own mind, which was really, really fun to play, especially because it's like, wait, if you're in here, where are we? There was quite a lot of that. And the other one, just because it was so out of line with everything else, was a small convention. Simon was running his superhero game, Comics Code. And he went, make anything. And I said, don't say that. And he went, don't worry about it. It's fine. So everyone else went, it was like late 80s superheroes, and everyone went quite sensible. And I would, every time someone said something, like their character concepts, I was just like, oh God. And finally got around to me, and I went, well, I'm playing the Funk. So I have put almost all my points into support moves because I have a giant afro and I can just keep pulling things out of it. Huge flares, like, disco ball shirt. I have sunglasses, and just Simon's face was.
I forgot about Mutants and Mastermind. This is where it goes like bonkers, yeah. Or Fiasco, if you count it as a tabletop role-playing game. Fiasco is pretty much the best place for wacky concepts.
I don't know. I think Fiasco personally works when they're just a bit out of line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when it's relatively down to earth.
They could be someone you saw on the street. There's something you could believe about that weird guy on the corner. you know?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I think it depends a lot. Which I've only ever done relatively down to earth play sets.
Yeah, that's true.
Where it's kind of there might be some odd stuff, but it's more weird fluke than full on superpowers or whatever. You might be weird hillbillies, but that's about the extent of it.
Chris, so wildest concepts?
I've never actually played anything that crazy. So my current character is in a like cyberpunk Japanese horror type game, and she's a 19-year-old university student who's basically a YouTube exorcist idol.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty fun.
Did you say exorcist idol?
Yes, as in idol, as in Japanese style pop star.
Yeah. So YouTube exorcist VIP.
Yeah, so she basically spends most of her time going to various odd, possibly spooky, haunted sites, dressing up like a priestess and doing exorcisms, and just recording everything.
Dimitiris, the best thing about this is, have you realised that Chris doesn't find this like strange in the slightest?
I'm so Can I will you sue me if I start doing this on YouTube?
Do it.
If you want to knock yourself out.
All right, thanks.
I think the most fun is when the GM realised that I was deadly serious in character about recording everything, and just him continually making up reasons for why my recording of the monster or the ghost or whatever that actually happened isn't in because it's in 2040 or something. Why do I not have this in 8K Super HD? It was blurry. God damn it. That's literally my thing.
Oh man. Some of the weird ones from Mashup have included that time Graham decided to play a bowl of fruit.
Yes.
A bowl of fruit.
A bowl of fruit.
Oh,
it had psychic powers, I think.
That's the gimmick I said in the beginning. That's when it's too much. Like Exorcist Idol, I'm fine. Bowl of fruit, no.
Is that your line?
Each of the fruit had a different power.
You're not making this better.
It was horrendously weird. And also, no one ever saw them move. Just stuff just happened around the fruit, and suddenly there'd be a cherry stuck in a guy's face or something. But no one ever saw it get there. It was really weird.
Wasn't that the game where they formed a samba band or something?
No, that I was going to get to that. There was also in the same game, I think John picked Asbestos Man and Barry the Evil Sheep because he'd been on fire in the last game and didn't want to do that again. There was another one where Graham played a guy who was I think a wombat or something, and he put a thing, not a platypus, on his sheet at the very beginning, and 6 hours later someone turned around and went, yeah, we need to get the platypus to sort this out. And he turned around, well, I'm not a platypus, it says right here. And how he managed to guess that, I have no idea. It was like a joke, 6 hours in the making. It was beautiful.
Did you make him roll for his not a platypus skill?
I think at that point everyone had collapsed laughing. So,
that's very Mashup.
Then the year after that, he came back and played the mango from the bowl of fruit, who'd gone and got a solo career in a jazz band.
And you didn't think to mention this in the NPC? Because it's a PC, right?
That's a PC, yeah. That was someone's player character that came back.
Recurring PC, no less.
And it was in a jazz band. They were the head of a jazz band, and their saxophonist was also a PC, who was a shadow in a lab coat, I think, with a flaming saxophone. And they formed a band and then had some internal rivalry. And I think Dr. Sax, that was Joel, basically let the mango die and then felt super guilty about it. It was very bizarre and melodramatic.
Again, very Mashup.
Yeah, that game does lend itself very well to strange character concepts. I said someone played a think tank out of Ghost in a Shell. That was pretty cool.
Essentially, you just have a pool of dice you can assign to whatever free text descriptors you want, really, don't you?
It's a crazy game, so it does
yeah.
lend itself to this sort of thing very well.
It's great fun, but yeah, anyone trying to do that for long-term campaign play is probably going to end up in an asylum or something.
It's bad enough trying to do it for 6 hours. It really is.
I've always been impressed with your stamina managing to actually do that and not just tell everyone to go away.
It's crazy burnout. Anyway, right, so we'll see you next time on Roll on the Adventure. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.